The silence was the loudest thing in the apartment. Louder than the traffic humming 5 stories below on the Austin streets. Louder than the frantic beat of my own heart. It had been 3 days. 72 hours since Dan's side of the bed had gone cold for the last time. 72 hours since his texts stopped arriving. Since his calls started going straight to voicemail. Since his profile picture on everything vanished into a gray, anonymous default. 72 hours since 5 years of my life evaporated like morning mist. 5 years. It felt ludicrous. You don't just ghost someone after 5 years. Not after sharing an apartment, adopting a ridiculous fluffy cat named Schrödinger, who now seemed to be searching for Dan, sniffing the empty space beside me on the sofa, meeting families, talking about mortgage rates and school districts, picking out engagement ring styles just for fun. People break up, they fight, they have excruciating, tear-filled conversations. They don't just cease to exist. But Dan had. I'd come back from a weekend visiting my parents in San Antonio to find his closet half empty. Not completely empty. That would have been too clean, too considerate. No, he'd taken the things he presumably cared about most. His favorite designer sneakers, the watch I got him for our 3rd anniversary, his work suits. He left behind old t-shirts, worn-out jeans, and the framed photo of us from that trip. To Colorado, face down on the dresser. His toothbrush was gone. His ridiculously expensive pour-over coffee setup vanished. The first 24 hours were frantic denial. His phone died. He lost it. He was in an accident. God forbid, but please, let there be some explanation. I called hospitals. I called his work. They said he'd called in sick. I called his best friend, Mark, who sounded cagey and uncomfortable, muttering something about Dan needing space. Space? Was I orbiting too close? We lived together. We shared a $2,500 a month lease. Where exactly was this space located? Day 3. The frantic worry had curdled into a sickening dread, then into a cold, hard certainty. He wasn't lost. He wasn't hurt. He had simply left, excised me from his life with the precision of a surgeon, leaving behind a gaping wound and a pile of shared bills. My best friend, Maya, was my rock. She showed up with pizza, ice cream, and a determination that bordered on terrifying. "Okay," she said, settling onto the floor amidst the emotional wreckage of my living room, Schrödinger tentatively sniffing her offered slice of pepperoni. Operation Find the Coward is a go. But first, Operation Financial Triage. She was right. Panic set in as I realized the rent was due next week. Our joint savings account, the one we'd painstakingly fed with $100 each paycheck for future goals, needed checking. I logged in, my hands shaking. Balance, $1,738. It had held just over $3,000 2 weeks ago. Transaction history showed a single withdrawal 4 days ago, the day before I left for San Antonio. Maximum withdrawal limit, straight into an account I didn't recognize. Nausea rolled over me. It wasn't just abandonment. It was theft. Calculated, cold. He'd planned this. While I was packing my weekend bag, excited to tell my parents how well things were going, he was emptying our future fund and plotting his escape. That absolute bastard, Maya breathed, her eyes narrowed. Okay, Ava, no more benefit of the doubt. This isn't space. This is scorched earth. The next few weeks were a blur of pain, paperwork, and pathetic late-night scrolling through his now empty social media profiles, hoping for a sign, any sign. I had to negotiate with our landlord, explaining the situation, trying to break the lease without incurring crippling fees. He was sympathetic, but bound by the contract Dan and I had both signed. I'd likely lose our security deposit and possibly owe another month's rent. The $3,000 Dan stole would have covered that perfectly. Maya, fueled by righteous indignation and frankly better investigative skills than I possessed in my grief-stricken state, started digging. She remembered Dan mentioning a new colleague. Chloe, a little too often. A quick, discreet search on LinkedIn, thank God for Maya's premium account, and then Instagram, hers was private, but Maya had a knack for finding mutual connections, painted a picture. Chloe. Blonde, bubbly, seemingly everything I wasn't at that moment, which was functional. There were no pictures of her and Dan together. Not yet. But the timing, the whispers I'd dismissed as paranoia. It started to click. The real confirmation came accidentally. I was packing up more of Dan's abandoned belongings, tears blurring, my vision as I folded a stupid band t-shirt he loved. Something crackled in the pocket. A receipt. Dinner for two at that fancy Italian place downtown we'd always said was too expensive. Date. 3 weeks ago. The night he'd claimed he was working late. Time. 9:45 p.m. Paid with his personal credit card. Below the total, a handwritten note. Chloe, best first date ever? First date? While living with me? While sleeping beside me? Something inside me snapped. The grief didn't vanish, but it crystallized. It became sharp, focused rage. It wasn't just Chloe, was it? This wasn't a sudden lapse. This was a pattern. The late nights, the unexplained work trips, the vague answers. How much had I missed? How much had I willfully ignored? My mission changed. It wasn't about getting him back. It wasn't even just about survival anymore. It was about truth. His truth. The one he'd so carefully hidden behind a charming smile and empty promises. The next 6 months were about rebuilding. I found a smaller, more affordable apartment across town. I threw myself into my graphic design work, taking on extra freelance projects. I cried a lot. I leaned heavily on Maya. I adopted Schrödinger officially as my sole dependent. And slowly, meticulously, I gathered evidence. It started with the receipt. Then I remembered shared cloud accounts we hadn't bothered disconnecting. Old photo streams revealed pictures I hadn't seen. Him cozy with women I didn't recognize at work events I wasn't invited to. Deleted emails recovered from the trash folder painted an even uglier picture. Flirtatious messages, confirmations, for hotel rooms booked under his name in cities he supposedly visited alone for business. One email chain, dating back over a year, was with a woman whose wedding photos I'd liked on Facebook months ago because Dan had been a groomsman. He'd apparently started an affair with one of the bridesmaids during the wedding weekend. Each discovery was a fresh stab, but each piece of evidence also fueled my resolve. I saved everything. Screenshots, dates, times, names, where I could find them. I created a timeline, a nauseating tapestry of his deceit woven through the fabric of our 5 years together. The $3,000 felt less like theft and more like hush money he'd paid himself to disappear quietly. I didn't know exactly what I would do with it all. Part of me just needed to know. To catalog the betrayal. To understand the depth of the deception. But another part, the part forged in the fire of that sudden, brutal silence, wanted him to face it. Not just me, but the world he'd carefully curated. The friends who thought he was a stand-up guy. The family who adored him. He'd built his life on lies. It was time for some foundational restructuring. 8 months after the ghosting, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. My stomach lurched. I almost ignored it, but morbid curiosity won. Hello? Ava, it's Dan. His voice. The same smooth baritone that had once calmed my anxieties now sent a jolt of ice water through my veins. He sounded hesitant, unsure. Good. What do you want, Dan? My voice was steadier than I felt. I know I owe you an explanation. A massive apology. I was a coward, Ava. Things got complicated and I handled it horribly. I've been doing a lot of thinking. Blah, blah, blah. The classic non-apology apology. Things got complicated, as if infidelity and theft were spontaneous weather events. Thinking about what, exactly? I asked, keeping my tone level. How to ghost someone more efficiently. Next time? Or did you run out of joint accounts to drain? Silence. Then, a sigh. Okay, I deserve that. All of it. Look, can we meet? Coffee? Just talk? Please? Part of me screamed no. The rational part. But the part holding the meticulously compiled file of his betrayal saw an opportunity. Not for reconciliation. That ship hadn't just sailed, it had been torpedoed, but for confrontation. On my terms. Fine, I said. Tomorrow, noon. Mozart's Coffee Roasters. Their patio. Public place. Yeah, okay, great. Thank you, Ava. He sounded relieved, hopeful even. The arrogance was astounding. I spent the evening reviewing my notes, not out of nervousness, but to solidify my resolve. Maya came over for moral support. You got this, she said, squeezing my hand. Remember why you're doing this. Not for him, for you. To close the door so hard he feels the draft. The next day, I chose my outfit carefully. A sharp blazer, jeans, boots. Professional, put together, armored. I arrived early, picked a table with a clear view of the entrance, and ordered an iced tea. He walked in right at noon, looking around, nervously. He looked diminished. Thinner, maybe? Less of the effortless confidence he used to radiate. He spotted me and offered a tentative smile. I didn't return it. He sat down, fidgeting. Thanks for meeting me. Why are you really here, Dan? I cut straight to it. No pleasantries. He launched into a rambling monologue. Things with Chloe hadn't worked out. She wasn't you, Ava. He'd been under pressure at work. He missed me. He missed our life. He regretted everything. He actually used the phrase, made a huge mistake. I let him talk, sipping my tea, my expression unreadable. I watched him, noticing the way he avoided my eyes, the slight tremor in his hands. He wasn't sorry for what he did. He was sorry he got caught. Sorry. His escape route hadn't led to paradise. When he finally wound down, looking at me expectantly, I leaned forward slightly. Are you done? I asked quietly. He nodded, looking confused. Good. Because you seem to be operating under a massive delusion. You think you can just reappear after 8 months, after ghosting me, stealing from me and lying to me for God knows how long, and I'll just... What? Fall back into your arms because things didn't work out with Chloe? He flinched. It wasn't just Chloe. He started, then stopped. Oh, I know, I said, my voice dangerously soft. Let's see. There was Sarah, wasn't there? From Mark's wedding. Met her at the wedding, hooked up that weekend while I was back home dealing with a plumbing leak in our apartment. Classy. His face went pale. How... And then there was Emily from accounting, right? The late nights at the office often included dinner at places like Trulux, apparently. Your credit card statements are quite illuminating. His jaw clenched. You went through my stuff? You abandoned your stuff, Dan. I corrected him sharply. Along with your responsibilities, your promises, and any shred of decency you might have possessed. You left me to deal with the fallout, the lease, the questions, the humiliation, and the $3,000 you stole from our savings. Really smooth, he tried to interrupt, to justify, but I held up a hand. No, you don't get to talk anymore. You don't get excuses. You made your choices. You decided 5 years meant nothing. You decided I meant nothing. You could have talked to me. You could have broken up with me like a grown adult. But you chose the coward's way out, compounded by theft and infidelity on a scale that, frankly, is almost impressive in its sociopathy. I paused, letting the words hang in the air between us. People at nearby tables were subtly trying not to. Listen. Good. So, no, Dan, I continued, my voice gaining strength. We're not getting back together. We're not talking. You don't get to miss me. You forfeited that right when you vanished without a word. You wanted space? You have it. Enjoy the void." He looked stunned, speechless. Maybe, just maybe, he was realizing the extent of what I knew. "I don't know what you think you know, Ava, but I know everything," I interrupted, leaning back in my chair. "And soon others will too. The carefully crafted image of Dan Sterling stand-up guy is about to get a significant reality check." His eyes widened in panic. "What are you talking about? What did you do?" "Not yet," I said calmly. "But consider this our final conversation. Don't contact me again. Don't try to apologize again. Just disappear, like you're so good at doing." I stood up, leaving my half-finished iced tea on the table. He started to rise, protesting. "Ava, wait! Goodbye, Dan." I turned and walked away without looking back, feeling lighter than I had in 8 months. The confrontation hadn't magically healed the wound, but it had cauterized it. That evening, I executed the final phase. It wasn't a dramatic social media blast that felt too messy, too public in a way that could backfire. Instead, I'd created a private, password-protected webpage. On it, I laid out the timeline, the facts, supported by the evidence, screenshots of emails and texts, names redacted where necessary, focusing solely on his actions, the damning dinner receipt, excerpts from credit card statements showing hotel, bookings, a clear account of the ghosting, the stolen money. It was clinical, factual, and undeniable. I drafted an email. It was concise, calm, and stated facts, not accusations. Subject: Information regarding Dan Sterling. Dear friends and family, this is difficult to write, but after much consideration, I feel it's necessary to share some information regarding Dan, specifically concerning the end of our 5-year relationship and his actions leading up to it. Many of you know he ended our relationship abruptly 8 months ago. The reality of his departure and his conduct during our relationship is something I believe those who care about him, or who have been led to believe a certain narrative, deserve to know. I have compiled factual information and evidence regarding his infidelity, the circumstances of his leaving, and financial deceit. You can view this information securely here. Link to private web page. Password. Simple password, perhaps related to a shared memory he'd corrupted. My intention isn't malicious gossip, but transparency. Dan constructed a reality based on lies, and I believe the truth matters. This is the last time I will be addressing this matter. Sincerely, Ava Martinez. My finger hovered over the send button. This was it. No turning back. I took a deep breath and clicked. The email went out to a carefully curated list. Our mutual friends, his closest friends whose emails I had or could guess, his sister, his parents. I shut my laptop. I didn't know what the immediate fallout would be, and part of me didn't care. I hadn't done it for fireworks. I'd done it to reclaim the narrative, to expose the truth he'd tried to bury. He'd ghosted me, attempting to erase me and our history. Now, his history, the real version, was laid bare for the people whose opinions he likely valued most. The next few days were quiet on my end. Maya reported some secondhand rumblings, shocked texts between mutual friends, awkward silences, Dan apparently going completely offline. One mutual friend texted me simply, "Wow, I'm so sorry, Ava. Had no idea." That was enough. I never heard from Dan directly again. The silence this time felt different. It wasn't the terrifying, confusing silence of abandonment. It was the quiet, empowering silence of a closed door, the silence of peace. Healing wasn't instantaneous. Trust was a shattered thing I'd have to rebuild carefully. But standing in my own apartment, paying my own bills, with Schrödinger purring on my lap, I felt a sense of profound release. He hadn't broken me. He'd revealed a strength I didn't know I possessed. He tried to erase 5 years. Instead, he inadvertently forged the foundation for the rest of my life. A life built on truth, resilience, and the knowledge that I could survive the storm and walk away, leaving the ghosts behind me. The $3,000 still stung, but the price of freedom, of knowing the truth, and ensuring others did too, that felt like a bargain.